Good evening. I now call this meeting of the Board of Adjustment to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
John Moreland.
Here.
Owen Curley.
Here.
Alexi Gonzalez. Here. Jeff Trular.
Here.
Dan O'Malley. Todd Smith.
Here.
Jennifer Williams.
Here. Thank you. If everybody's had a chance to review the minutes from last week, I entertain a motion.
Please try. I don't think we actually had minutes this time. There was a delay getting it ready.
Oh,
So
okay.
two sets at the next meeting.
All right. We will get to that hopefully next time then. Any correspondence?
None.
Great, then we will move on to old business. There's one case of old business this week. If we could call that case, please.
Board calls case number BOA 22-100012. Applicant New Atlantic Builders, Inc. Property address 0 12th Avenue South. Motion to consider sections 34-340E1C2 for a side yard setback of 7.5 feet in lieu of 10 feet minimum, and 34-340E1F for lot coverage of 50% in lieu of 35% maximum to allow for construction of a new two-family dwelling.
Thank you. And as a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak when we open the public hearing. And I did forget a little bit of housekeeping at the beginning. I apologize. Any person who's not an applicant or agent who wishes to speak will need to fill out a speaker's card located on the side table by the door and turn them into the clerk. Please refrain from speaking from the audience, and applause or cheering will not be allowed. And please silence your cell phones. Does any member of the board have any ex parte communication on this case?
I've had none.
I've had none.
No ex parte.
I've had none.
I've had none.
I've had none. Okay, and would the applicant please turn to the clerk and be sworn in to give your presentation?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I did.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Stephen Williams, 3731 Duval Drive, Jacksonville Beach.
Thank you, and can you please tell us the nature of your hardship at this property?
So the hardship is that this lot is 50 foot wide by 125 feet. It requires a 60 foot wide minimum. That is the hardship that's creating both the setback requirement request as well as the lot coverage request. I know that the staff have mixed feelings about the lot coverage request, but I would like you to consider the following. The first thing is I did try to do some research in advance of this. I did find one RM2 zoning two-family dwelling that was granted, and I understand it's back in 2005, but 54% lot coverage in lieu of 35% as one example, but I think you'll understand more as I go through this. The second point I wanted to bring to the board's attention was that, the fact that property is substandard in width is also contributing to the lot coverage request, regardless of what the staff has recommended. And I understand the law is 6250 square feet in size. The reason is even if the applicant built a home within allowable setbacks of 20 foot in the front, 30 foot in the rear, 10 and 10 on the sides, and put driveway strips in, no big driveways and just one front walk, you'd still get 44% lot coverage, even if we didn't come in and ask for a side yard setback. That's all we're asking for, 7.5 feet. So the fact that the lot is 50 feet wide instead of 60 feet is also contributing to the lot coverage problem. The third thing I'd like to argue is that the requirement for a two-family dwelling in an RM2 zoning district being restricted to 35% lot coverage is really disproportionately burdensome when you compare it to multiple family dwellings in that same RM2 zoning district. Because think about it, if you drive east of A1A up and down First Street or Second Street, they're allowed to build 3 units on these same 50 by 125 foot lots and they're allowed to cover up to 65% of the lot. So it seems, I understand, I'm talking to Christian, that, you know, these lots were platted in 1909. The zoning that we have currently for RN2, he's working on it. It seems like it's not fair to all parties when you really look at this example I'm making. You're promoting with this, and there's a lot of those three-family dwellings when you drive up and down the beach east of A1A. When you look at all those three-family dwellings, what we're doing is promoting excessive density when if you could allow us to stick to a two-family dwelling, we would be promoting a better quality of life via a lower density two-family dwelling.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant? Any questions of the applicant?
Steve, I understand what you're saying, and partly agrees with you, but is it not also true that if you built just a somewhat smaller house on that lot, you wouldn't need the lot coverage variance?
Yeah, you could make that argument, but I would push back and say you're going to end up forcing the builder to go with 3 units, and we don't think that's you know, really promoting what we would like to do in Jacksonville Beach. It doesn't make sense in our opinion. You'd be cramming in 1 unit on the back, access via the alley, the 2 units on the front, and you've seen all those kinds of different designs out there. But even when you stick to the setbacks required, if we were to maximize that, we'd still be back in here asking for a lot coverage variance.
Well, why are you saying that you're gonna have to change it from 2-family to 3-family if you do that?
Well, because that's the only way we could get relief. It's the only way we could make it financially justifiable, as well as, you know, to make it work for what this is requiring. Christian and I have had many conversations about this, and the difference between a 2-family dwelling and a multiple family dwelling, which is 3 units or larger, 35 to 65. That's really,
That's a unit.
yeah, that's a huge jump. So we're asking, you know, for 50% here, so we could have and if you look at the site plan, you'll notice that we've tried to stick to thin driveway strips and just 1 3-foot wide walkway from the front of 12th Avenue.
Now, would you have to get it rezoned to RN3 then, if you put 3 units on?
Christian, are you able to speak to that?
Yeah, so first thing, based on the comprehensive plan, there's a maximum density per acre that's allowed. In this case, it would be 20 units per acre based on the location of the property. Given their lot size, they actually couldn't do 3 units regardless, because they don't have enough density. They can only do 2. So there's really no way to get to 3 units on this particular piece of property. However, to point the applicant made, our code, and it's something I've been trying to work on my memo for you guys on, our code allows for a 2-unit multifamily. Most municipalities have a minimum of 3 units to achieve an apartment, so to speak. Here we do allow 2-unit multifamily, but the difference being that those would have to be limited to condos or apartments versus a 2-unit or a 2-family dwelling is a fee simple product that can be sold. So they're different housing stocks, so to speak. As a fee simple, typically those have a yard and things associated with it that are privately owned, whereas an apartment would be a 2-unit with an association of some type between those 2 owners to take care of the property. It's a different product, and so the logic, I think, was to have a different relationship with the property as far as lot coverage goes.
Any other questions for the applicant at this time?
I have none.
Have you investigated putting a smaller 2-unit structure on this lot?
Yeah, I mean, we've looked at that, but it's not financially viable in the market we're in right now.
What does that mean? Sorry, can you expound on that?
Well, by the time you calculate the price of the lot, cost of construction, where we all know it has just gone crazy, to be able to turn around and make a reasonable profit and sell that to Christian's point, be simple, where you've got actual home ownership here. It seems to me like that's a better promotion than being forced to build a 3-unit, in this, instead of an apartment, to be a condominium. And I just don't think that's what we want.
Thank you. Any final questions? Okay, you can be seated for now. Is there anyone, oh, I'm sorry, we actually have a couple speaker cards.
Bill Black.
Good evening.
Thank you. You can turn to the clerk to be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
William Black, 1122 and a half South First Street, Jacksonville Beach, Florida.
Thank you, and I'll start the timer for 3 minutes.
Okay, I have a few questions.
I'm sorry, 1 moment. I just want to make sure I'm still. There we go. Go ahead.
Who owns this property? There's a for sale sign on the front of the property right now, so we have no idea in the neighborhood who's asking for the variance, the seller or the buyer. And that's one question. We weren't notified about this meeting, that's real quick, but, and as far as using garages in the alley, the people that use the alley for parking, I happen to live on the alley, my house faces the alley, and there's only one property in that whole alley that used 12th Avenue South, and that's one of the ones that the developer's gonna knock down. All those people that use the alley for egress and exit, their property faces the alley, in front of their house is, they have no access to the street. So I would request if you do grant them a variance, to make them use 12th Avenue South like the property next door does, on the corner there. Because it's a street, the alley is one way or one way the other, you can't, you know, it's congested. And one time, my house and the property in question were one piece. When the owner sold it, they separated, so I wound up at the house. But my house, my dining room, is about 2 feet from the property line on that side, on the east side. So I would request a 10-foot setback there because we're facing the ocean, and that's going to increase the wind velocity if you put us that close. And that'll put the building 7 feet outside of my house. So if you're going to do this, you could put 10 feet on one side and 5 feet on the other side because they're going to knock that house down anyhow over there. Or if you needed some more space, there's 30 feet city variance in the front that everybody uses for parking and front lawn and everything. You could take a 20-foot front setback and make it 15 and it wouldn't increase the problem. And there are some, in the alley there is like he said, a 3-story, 3-unit building that's built there within the code. They get along good. The property next door is a 2-family, 3-story unit that is built within the code. The house that was recently built on the corner, they gave a 10-foot setback in the back and added a little extra on the alley parking lot because if you don't have it, you're going to back into the guy's fence next to you or whatever. If you drive down the alley, you'll see barricades to keep people from knocking down your fence, knocking into your car, etc. So the lot is 6,250 square feet. And that's within the code for building a 2-family dwelling. And as far as 60 foot, none of the lots in that whole area or in that area of Jacksonville Beach are 60 foot wide to begin with.
Thank you, sir. I'm so sorry. I don't want to cut you off, but I do want to make you aware that the 3 minutes has expired, and we
Okay.
appreciate your testimony. Is there another speaker card?
Bruce, Wouters?
Close enough.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Lock, sorry.
It's very unusual. Well, I
Please
live,
raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Bruce Paul Wouters, 124 12 Minutes South, Jacksonville Beach, Florida.
Thank you, and as a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
All right, thank you. In listening to the petitioners say that they need to maximize things because to make it financially viable, I asked you to look at the record and see the sale price of this building, which was $420,000 in 2001, which is laughable. That's at least $300,000 under market value. We have owned, my family has owned this property, my extended family, since 1978. I know the man that owned it. I know his sister that lived next door. They had all 3 properties. This is nothing but greed. I looked at their answers to the 6 questions. They're full of untruths and boilerplate language, in my opinion.
Sir, could you speak a little bit louder?
Yes,
so I
I'll be
can-
happy to.
Thank you.
For example, there's no house on our block or on the next block that has these dimensions. That's completely untrue. I think that was the answer to question number 5. The original report written by the staff on March 15, before they had the audacity to go from 44% coverage to over 50% coverage, said, no, this is more than the coverage should be allowed, regardless of the setbacks. So now they come back saying, we want more than 44%, we want more than 50%. And I don't see any special hardship or exemptions that should apply to this situation. And that's pretty much the crux of it. Thank you.
Thank you. There was another card submitted for agenda item A, by,
David Willis?
is that for this item or the? Okay.
Yes.
We have 2 agenda item A, so I just wanted to make sure. And you can turn to the clerk to be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Hi, I'm Dave Willis. I live at 1221 First Street, South Jackson Beach. That is in this neighborhood. I can see this property out my front door. And I'm familiar with this neighborhood. I've lived in Jackson Beach most of my life. I own many, many different properties throughout all of Jackson Beach. I've been before this board myself in many houses set up there. I want to say that this neighborhood in South Jackson Beach is going through a beautiful renovation. As we all see now, many of the older homes that served their purpose the first 50 years of the 1900s, maybe some new ones for the second 50 years of the 1900s, they're being now taken down and new, beautiful homes are being built. I encourage good development, not dense development. The principle that Mr. Williams is speaking about, and I'm aware of, and the reason I'm here, is that if he is to build a duplex or a double unit on that property, that's a 2-people occupancy. And if he's granted this variance, he can do that. And the other speakers spoke about, we don't want to use the alley. Well, if you build a duplex and you have 2 garages in the front, that alleviates that problem. If he is denied, as he stated, he's perfectly within his legal rights to build a triplex. There are several 3-unit buildings in this neighborhood. I can see them from my view where I live. We don't need that. We don't need additional high density. We need good development, not crowded development. This is a good use of the property. Our beaches is growing whether we like it or not. I know I'm one of the old folks from here and served here all my life, grew up here. I'm all for putting a gate at the bridge and saying if you got a membership card you can come. But we can't do that, folks. What we can do is try to encourage good development. Less density, high use, good use of the property, allowing to build a beautiful product that supports the surrounding values. Let's not make this person go build a threeplex. I'll be here saying no, but he won't even be here. He's allowed to get 65% coverage. Let's do what we can to encourage good development in Jacksonville Beach. And let's see if we can keep the occupancy and density down with maximum 2 units. Grant the man his petition. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe there was one letter. Email.
Do you want to read it or something?
I would say we can go ahead and read it.
So we have one email from David Rost. He's the property owner at 1224 First Street South, Unit 1B, Jacksonville Beach. He claims to be speaking on behalf of the 9 property owners, but will ignore that and just read his letter. Respectfully request that the application is denied for a variance. The overbuilding, lack of adequate on-street parking, and unnecessary strain on the stormwater drainage system has got to stop. 1, please take a walk around the area on a sunny day. You will find cars parked on the public sidewalks, which is a traffic violation, without consequences, and every other place where a car will fit because of no adequate parking on site. 2, setbacks have been relaxed in so many previous applications that there is no visible appearance of any code at all. 3, the city replaced the main stormwater drainage system under First Street South with a 52-inch main, and we were told by a city engineer after completion that the capacity of the renovated system is at its limit, and that the drainage mitigation on our property, a moat, continues to be mandatory. Yet the board continues to approve variances for lot coverage. It appears to the citizens and owners of property in Jacksonville Beach that the planning board will approve almost any new application for variances with some cosmetic changes, to the point that Jacksonville Beach is not an attractive beach destination, but it is only another beach town that has allowed development to continue to be unabated. This is a shame because the beach in Jacksonville Beach is a beautiful large beach, but Florida towns with lesser beaches are ranked higher on travel sites. No wonder when you look in the way that Jack's Beach is being overdeveloped. I attended the planning board meeting that approved the 4 townhouses development on 13th Avenue South. The approval was granted, notwithstanding that the driveways on the plan were shorter than most cars sold in the United States today. There was no concern by board members present about any obstructions of city sidewalks. I have no faith that this request for denial will be taken serious by the board, but I wanted my request for denial to be part of the record. Very truly yours, David Rost. That's it.
Is there anyone in the audience who has not filled out a speaker's card that wishes to speak at this time? If so, please make sure you fill out a speaker's card before you leave. Any members of the audience who wish to speak on this matter? Okay, if the applicant would like to come forward and address any of the comments made during the public hearing.
Regarding the second speaker, I just wanted to note it for the record, the reason we asked to defer originally from March 15th was not because we wanted to increase the density request from 44% to 50%. It was because I'd handwritten the application, it said 49.9%. It was mistakenly interpreted by staff to be 44%. I apologize that I didn't type it. So when I pointed that out to staff, they allowed me to defer and come back, and they rounded it up to 50%. So that was, didn't want anyone to think that we were trying to increase from 44% to 50%. The second thing regarding the letter, he's making all the points and the reasons why we should be trying to do 2 units rather than what's going to end up happening to this lot, 3 units. And he's worried about excess capacity on the storm drainage system. He's talking about the parking. If you notice the site plan, you'll see we've not encroached on the rear setback. We're going to have nice deep driveways. So I think it's a win-win for him, compared to what some of these other ones, these multiple family dwellings that are being built, and where they're crowding the alleyways and they're just crowding everything. So I hope you respectfully approve our request. Looking forward to your response.
Thank you. I'll now close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve BOA 22-100012 based on the testimony and evidence provided. The request has met all the standards for a variance as outlined in section 34-286 of the Land Development Code.
Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, do we need a second to discuss? We do. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and it's now open for discussion.
I recognize the width is a challenge.
I recognize the width is a hardship there, but I'm struggling with the square footage of the lot.
Especially given that the lot is actually technically oversized for this zoning district. I agree with you.
And I don't respond to the strategy to make it worse as a reason to approve.
And on that note, Christian, can you just confirm that I heard you correctly? Based on the size, the acreage of this lot, they are not allowed to build a 3-unit, even if they get denied and reapply. It's not large enough to put 3 units on it. Is that what you?
Yeah, so there's kind of two points to that. The first is, the Land Development Code requires 5,000 square feet minimum for 2 units, and then an additional 1,000 square feet for each unit thereafter. So under the Land Development Code, generally it would seem like they have enough land, but the comp plan also limits density based on acreage, and given the size of the lot, they wouldn't be able to achieve a full 3 units under the density calculations. So they're very close. They're off by a couple hundred feet, at least based on my quick calculations here. But they would not be able to achieve 3 units. So
Did they apply for a variance to get?
no, you
rezoned?
can't variance your way out of comp plan requirements. There's basically no relief from the comp plan.
So the discussion about if they don't get approved for these 2 units as submitted, they're gonna move to 3 is kind of a moot discussion point.
I mean, I think it would be moot anyway, because it's not really under the criteria of the variance.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, obviously without, being able to do a full evaluation, like I said, quick computations, I don't think they could achieve 3 units. Regardless, if they did want to seek 3 units, they would run into issues with providing parking, because you have to have 2 parking spaces for each unit, so there would be more complications with that, even beyond just the basic density question. I think it's unlikely that they could get there, even if they had additional land. If that helps.
And without the variance being approved for lot coverage, given that the existing nonconformities that are on the lot with regards to width, are they still able to build, if they don't get the lot coverage variance, are they still able to build structures that meet the legal requirements in terms of square footage for 2-unit multifamily?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Yes. So the minimum is 1,600 square foot of footprint for the building.
For the total building or for each?
No, for the total building, 800 per unit is the minimum. So with that, the building alone would be about 25% lot coverage at the minimum size, and then with driveways and things like that, they may approach 35, but it's feasible to do without relief from lot coverage. And they can go up to 35 feet, so they could potentially have, 2,400 square feet per unit if they did 3 stories.
Well, the question would argue they can't make a profit or make a reasonable profit based on doing it within code. How do we know that's even true?
Well, it's not even one of the criteria for variance, so I would recommend you not consider that as a valid reason.
Administrative question, if we did deny this variance and they have to come back and reapply, they once they have 2-family, 25% reduction would also affect lot coverage and side setbacks? If we denied 7.5.
Yeah, they would have to alter the
Both
design.
sections by 25%? So I recognize the 50-foot challenge.
Right, and we
So they were,
amend the motion to only approve that half.
But if we deny both sections, they would have to come back with more of a challenge. The house would have to shrink.
Right.
I mean, the structure would be 30 feet wide at the most, because you've got 10 feet on either side. It's still feasible, but you have, you know,
15-foot wide.
right. So I think the site plan is 17 and a half.
So I look at this as the same issues that we've seen before, where someone designs something to go on a lot and needs a variance, that they've created the hardship. I mean, the width of the lot is at issue. But in designing something that requires a variance, I think that the hardship then is not based on the lot, but based on the person. It's created by the applicant. And I think that this is an example of it. That's what
I don't disagree with you, but I think to some extent, because of the fact that we have approved liberally in the past, we basically artificially inflated the financial market. And people are buying these lots for more money than they should be buying them for, assuming they can get variances.
That's the true.
And I think at
I
some
think you're
point,
giving us a little too much credit.
and I think responsibility, not credit is the right word.
Do we want to amend the motion?
I would certainly be willing to vote in favor of
So, we would amend the motion to say, so I guess we would amend the motion to approve the side yard setbacks and then deny, the lot coverage of 50%.
Yeah, but I don't think you need to amend the motion to say deny the second half. I think you would just amend the motion
Just approve.
to approve the side yard setback of 7.5 feet and move 10 feet minimum and leave it at that, which automatically precludes the lot coverage portion. Is that correct, Sandy?
Well, you would take it in two parts, because I think that's part of this application, it came in two parts, is that correct?
That's right, yeah, so there's two parts.
So
This,
we'll have to address that in some way, but you can do it in a separate motion, it just
Okay.
depends on how he wants to frame his amendment.
Okay.
so I'm gonna go ahead and, move to amend, the motion to approve so that, approval is for the side yard setback of 7.5 feet only and not for the lot coverage of 50%.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to amend the motion currently on the floor. Can we please vote on whether or not to amend that motion?
John Moreland,
Yes.
Owen Curley,
Yes.
Jeff Trular,
Yes.
Todd Smith,
Yes.
Alexi Gonzalez.
Yes. So is there any further discussion on the motion as amended?
No. Do we need to read the motion again, or
You should, just for the record.
should I do it, or should it?
You have it, we can just.
Okay. So the motion is then to approve BOA 21-1000012 for a side yard setback of 7.5 feet in lieu of 10 feet, and to deny the request for lot coverage of 50% in lieu of 35% maximum.
Sandy, is it okay to do them both at the same time? Or to vote in one fell swoop
Yeah, the way,
to approve and deny?
respectfully, the way you framed the amendment when you requested it, it was approved only the side back.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
And not the lot coverage.
Okay, so I would then, let me restate it. I'll make a motion to approve BOA 22-1000012 to approve the side yard setback of 7.5 feet and not approve coverage of 50%, of lot coverage of 50%.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
John Moreland,
Yes.
Owen Curley,
Yes.
Jeff Truelar,
Yes.
Todd Smith,
Yes.
Alexi Gonzalez.
Yes. So to the applicant, your request for a side yard setback of 7.5 feet in lieu of 10 feet minimum has been approved, and your request for lot coverage of 50% in lieu of 35% maximum has been denied. Moving on to new business, can we call the first case under new business, please?
Board calls BOA 22-100026, applicant Hannah Builders Property LLC, property address 16377 7th Street South. Motion to consider sections 34-337E1E for lot coverage of 45% in lieu of 35% maximum, to allow for construction of a new paver driveway to replace wheel strips in an existing single-family dwelling.
Thank you. As a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak once we open the public hearing. Does any board member have any ex parte communication on this agenda item?
I've heard none.
And none?
I've had none.
Had none.
I've had none. I've also had none. Would the applicant please come forward to be sworn in and give your presentation?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Mike Hanna, 134 36th Avenue South, Jacksonville Beach.
Thank you. And once,
hand out.
yeah, sure. Once you get back to the
Yeah.
podium, if you could please tell us the nature of your hardship at this
One hand
property.
on my hand. One of each. Or, oh no, 1, 2, 3. There should be 7. There's 7 of them in there. I don't know if Christian, you want to.
Usually went for the record.
So, well, I'll wait for that. I basically just typed out exactly what I'm going to say, so we'll just, you can read along, I'll really just read it. So, the variance was actually written incorrectly. I'm seeking 45% in lieu of 42.7, not 35. All right, so there's 2 documents. One is the one with the pictures, the other one is the drawings and some calculations. I'm just going to start reading from the top. I'm requesting 45% lot coverage in lieu of 42.7 that was granted to me in 2006. And here's how this all started. The original driveway that we drew for the house was drawn to be solid concrete from the garage to the street, inside of the left door jamb to the inside of the right door jamb. This setup tends to make you, when you park on this 2-car garage, you get out of your car and your car is on concrete, but when you get out, you step on grass. And that's my #1 complaint with most driveways. It's only 16 feet wide. So the grass also tends to get worn out and dies from the constant extra foot traffic, which then makes it turn into mud when it rains. So I decided to make a, quote, frame around the driveway out of concrete so you can step out of the car onto concrete, and I was going to make the 2 parking pads artificial turf. The picture, I currently have pine straw on the pads to keep the dirt to a minimum. So if you take the other document, one with the calculations right here, turn to the second page, and there's some renderings of what the driveway, upper left is what the driveway was going to be. You can see it's proportionally 2 cars, 2 standard sedans, 4-door sedans, parked next to each other with adequate space between them so you don't dent the car next to you. And when you get out, you're on the grass. So I took the driveway and took it out to the outside. And I don't know if anyone's driven by the house, but it's a detached garage in the front of the house, and the house sits behind it. So I took the driveway to the outside of the physical garage structure, and I left the parking pads where the car sits empty, the void, and I was going to do artificial turf. So my turf subcontractor, the second drawing, the upper right-hand corner, that's what's currently in existence. You can see the picture on the front page of the other document. So my turf subcontractor didn't recommend that level of daily abuse to the turf. He was afraid that the tires constantly parked in one spot would flatten the turf and it would look unsightly. So I planned to just use crushed granite. One day, George and I drove by, and unrelated to my job, and struck up a conversation and just asked in passing what's going in the parking pads. And I said, crushed granite. And he asked if I knew that a variance was required for that. And I said, well, I do now. I knew the code required a drivable surface, and it could not be regular grass or dirt. I've known that for forever. I just did not know it required a variance to be rock. So what I had originally designed for the house was a solid driveway. What I ended up doing was lessening my lot coverage by putting two pervious parking pads. So I'm currently at 40.27 coverage with the two parking pads being pervious material. That's 2.43% under what I'm allowed based on my 2006 variance. I have enough lot coverage left to do two 28-inch concrete, paver, brick, whatever strips within that void on each side. However, if you look at the other picture back over here, the bottom left, that shows it wouldn't be the different color. I just differentiated the color so you can see what it would add. That would effectively make 7 little concrete strips, and that might look odd. So I decided to apply for a variance to do the crushed granite instead of doing the strips. So then I thought, well, if I have to go to the trouble of applying for the variance and pay the money and do all this talking, I would at least start by asking for an additional a little over 2% is what I'm asking for, additional. So the reason why I'm asking for that is starting high and I hopefully walk out low, but I recently acquired a bunch of reclaimed brick from an oceanfront demolition that we just did, and I thought this would be a perfect place to use them. So I figured it would look nice. If the board says no to the extra coverage after what I'm about to explain to you, then I would at least like to be granted a variance for crushed granite in the parking pads. So that all brings us to this meeting. So the other thing is on this drawing right here, the bottom right, that's an option too that I could do and still be within my 42.7. However, that's not a continuous solid surface to the garage, to the garage. So I'm not sure if that qualifies, if I would need a variance to do that. I do not have to get a extra variance to do the strips. That's an option. Don't know if that requires variance. I can talk to George and I about that. So I'm not one to ask. I'm on page 2 of this document. I'm not one to ask for things that I don't believe are justified. So below I'm going to explain why I think this property deserves a little extra bit of percentage. The number one thing people talk about, and it was exactly what we were talking about in the last applicant, is water, rainwater, stormwater runoff. I've installed a $22,000+ underground stormwater management system on the whole property. It channels 100% of the roof rainwater to 2 underground and 1 surface retention basins. The entire system consists of 3 separate systems that work independently during light to moderate rainfall and integrally together during times of heavy rainfall or power outages. So now on this other driveway diagram, turn the page and you'll see my map of the drainage system. It's actually unbelievably impressive if you're into that sort of thing. It's probably the only house in all of Jacksonville Beach that has a system like this to manage the roof runoff water. I'm a civil engineer by education, master's and bachelor's in civil engineering. So this stuff is what tickles my fancy. So that's one reason I did it. So the systems 1 and 2, if you look at the map of the drainage systems, you'll see the garage in front, and then there's a space in between. And on the left and right, you'll see in purple Nyloplast basin. Not sure if you know what a Nyloplast basin is, but every municipality in the entire country uses those for their stormwater management throughout the city. And I use that here. That's the level of product that I use to manage the stormwater. The north and south systems are on the sides of the house. They're independent of one another, and each system directs approximately 2/5 of the roof runoff to a Nyloplast basin with a 12-inch diameter pipe. This drawing says 10-inch, but they're actually 12. And it's attached to the Nyloplast basin with a rock bed underneath for infiltration. So if you can imagine this vertical, it's probably this deep. The whole thing's about 4 feet deep. And it's 12 inches round, cylinder goes in the ground. At the bottom of it, there's a 13-foot long, 12-inch diameter pipe. And underneath that pipe is 2 foot of rock. So this is built exactly the way municipalities do, highways do. And all that's wrapped in fabric, so dirt can't infiltrate it. And so all the roof runoff water is directed to that basin, and it immediately falls out the bottom of the pipe. And I don't know if you know anything about infiltration rates of our sand around here. It's about 9 inches per hour is what the maximum is done in calculations. So all that water goes to the bottom of the pipe, and if the system ever gets overwhelmed by water, there's a sump pump in the Nyloplast basin. You can either choose to pump the excess water to the street. It's not really to the street, it's in the front yard, but it'll end up filtrating into the street. Or you can choose not to turn the pump on, and by either not choosing to turn the pump on or the power out goes out, the water backs up into the system, and there's emergency overflow pipes that go back to the back of the lot and flows to a basin that's built around the pool. So if you turn to page 3 of this dialogue document, unfortunately I couldn't figure out how to rotate some of these photos, so you're going to have to turn the page to see them right side up. But it'll give you an idea of how intricate the system is. So system 3 is an underground and surface retention basin surrounding the pool. The top of the pool, I'm going to say this statement ahead of time. The lot has 42 inches of fall from the street to the back of the lot. And I don't know if you know, that's insane. That's an insane amount of fall. So you have to build a house level. And so if I were to build a house level with the street, at the back, I'm 42 inches out of the ground. But you generally build your house up out of the ground. So at the back of the lot, the back porch is like right up to here. So what I did is I built a little garden wall around the pool. If you look at this last page, and then go to this page, so I'm going to point at this picture and follow me if you can. This is the back of the lot. The street is down here. This point is 42 inches below the street. The street is exactly level, identical, not even a fraction of an inch difference at each corner. This is 30 inches below the street, 42 inches below the street, which means this, from here to here, slopes 12 inches in 50 feet. That's a lot. So this red line represents a little garden wall, and you can build garden walls without, you don't have to have them engineered or permitted Jacksonville or Jack's Beach, but it's grade level here. It's at the grade, so it's not a wall. It's just like this tall. At this point here, it's flush with the ground, and as it traverses around the pool, the wall stays level. And so at this point, it's out of the ground maybe 18 inches or so. So what I accomplished with that is two things. One, you can walk around the pool and you stay level with the pool the whole time walking around the pool. Two, that little basin, that little wall created a retention basin. And so the rear of the house, the roof runoff goes to underground pipes around inside that little basin. And if that ever gets overwhelmed, it'll start bubbling up out of those boxes and perk out into the planter area. The pipes connecting the planter box, or the little drain boxes around the pool, are all perforated with, and when water gets in that pipe, it perks out as well. That rear retention basin also acts as an emergency overflow for the two front basins if they ever get overwhelmed. So, like I said, it's quite an elaborate system, and I've been over there during torrential downpours, and I've turned the pump on, I've turned the pump off. Turning the pump on, it's beautiful. It keeps up with the water, and it takes a lot of water to get to the point of needing to turn the pump on. And when you turn it off, everything flows to the back, and I have yet to see the back get even remotely overwhelmed. You know, if you walk on grass and it's like completely soaked, you can kind of get your shoe up about that high. That's about how bad it got. But the wall, a little mini wall around there, there's 6 inches between the top of the wall and the dirt around the pool. So water would have to get 6 inches deep before it goes over the wall. Okay, so on this page of this document, I'm on item B. So why did I install such an elaborate system? I don't think you can find anybody that's ever lived in Jacksonville Beach who spent $22,000 on a roof runoff drainage system and water management, and guarantee that. So I didn't do it for profit. I can guarantee that. So there's a 42-inch drop from the front to the rear. It's literally impossible to get the rainwater to the street. And David McDonald's a good friend of mine. He said, I understand it's impossible, do the best you can. Maybe get the front two downspouts to the street, but we'll deal with it later. So I knew how much water comes off the roof, and I didn't want to just do that, because if I let it just fall on the ground, it would all flow to the back. So if I didn't do something, then my rear yard neighbor would probably get 100% of my runoff. And that's not cool, because it's a lot of water. The neighbor to the south of me, he was going to try to be here, but he's not. He used to have flooding issues on his side yard, and all of his downspout water would gather up against his house and then filter underneath his deck. And you walk up there, and there's mosquitoes everywhere. So during the grading and installation process, I regraded his side yard, and I included his most contributing downspout into my system. So, and I have a gate valve where I can shut it off or open it up. So in a heavy rainfall, I can eliminate his downspout water from flooding his side yard. Let's see. Item number 4 on this page. I'm on this second to last page of this document. So 7th Street is prone to short-term flooding due to an asphalt hump in the road. You can see that hump. That's right where 7th Street turns kind of into Millie. It dams the water from getting to the storm drains on Millie. My water management system can remove, if you choose to, all 100% of my water from adding to that problem. Dave McDonald of Public Works is aware of the issue, and he says that they're going to fix it when budgeting allows, but I don't know if that's just a way to say never, but that's what he says. So, in closing, if runoff water is what you're concerned about by adding lot coverage, then please put that concern to ease due to the system I installed. and I completely get it if your position is against the variance for a different reason, principle, whatever it may be. If you're against the variance for the additional lot coverage, I just beg you to give me the variance for stone, because that was my original plan. And again, the only reason I'm asking for this is because I have to be here anyway, I might as well ask. And I wanted to show you my underground water management system, to show you what the extent that I went through to keep my water from hurting my neighbors. So the other reason that I wanted to do this now is to avoid a future homeowner just doing this on their own in the dark night. I know that's the drill. People just do it. You look in backyards, and some people have 100% of their backyards with pavers. So some homeowner in the future, if the house is for sale, if I put something that's not pavers there, they may just do it. And I'm going to tell them, if you do that, and Jack's Beach sees it, they're probably going to tell you to take it away, to remove it. That's going to cause, in my opinion, a waste of resources. I know Jack's Beach will win because it's the code. But if you give me this little variance for this little tiny percent, then that's gone. That will never be an issue. There's literally nothing left on the lot that anyone would ever want to cover. And if you care to drive by it, it's an absolute beautiful house. But there's a putting green, there's artificial turf in various places of the lot that water flows through that beautifully. And underneath there is a big rock bed. It's got probably 60% voids that holds any other surface runoff, but there's literally no surface runoff because it's just what rains down. All the other water is captured. So the percentage that I'm asking for, if you go back to this, you got a calculation, the table page, I've highlighted in pink. It's an additional 166.69 square feet. I knew I was going to be so close, so I measured everything to the 2 decimal places, and this is the true calculation of what's covered. I even included some things that normally would not be included. So 166.7 additional square feet, that makes the total lot coverage up to 44.92. I'm happy to have 44.92 instead of 45. I'm also happy to have none. I just need the variance for rock, for stone. And I need everybody to understand that if I don't get the extra percent, that somebody down the road is going to fill it in, and I don't think you guys have to deal with it, but somebody at Jack's Beach is going to have to deal with telling them they got to tear it out. So that's really the main reason for that.
Thank you. Does anybody have questions for this applicant?
I do, through the chair. Did you apply for the original variance?
I did.
What was the basis it was granted on, seeing that it was a square foot? It's 75
Yeah,
square
so
foot.
when we bought the lot, we had no idea that there was an alley in the back, none. I didn't even know there was an alley, let alone that it was abandoned. So in the meeting, God rest his soul, John Hayes brought up the fact that he said the board didn't even know. He said, hey, you guys, there's an alley in the back. He actually has 6 more feet of property. And nobody said, well, that means your lot is compliant and you don't have a hardship.
Okay.
So that's where it all came from. And I originally asked for an 18-foot rear yard and 47% lot coverage or something like that. And so when they added the extra 6 feet, it turned it into 42.7 and a 24-foot rear yard. And this is a fun fact. This lot and the one next to it, this one to the south, are the only 2 lots in all of Jacksonville Beach that I know of where you could build this particular house that are 150 foot deep. 150 foot deep, that's like gold. And so I was tickled to death that I got the variance. I didn't even know that there was an alley, but it made this possible. Yeah.
Well, I'm not an engineer.
I know. That's the alley.
And I don't understand, I don't know that that's a validity of what you're saying. but I do enjoy seeing your enthusiasm for what you've done.
Yeah, I mean, if you want a tour, I'd love to give you one. It's pretty impressive. Especially when it's pouring rain.
And the pavers that you're considering putting in, have you discussed with the building department at all, using the type of pavers that are, where you get partial credit? for
Well,
lot
yeah,
coverage?
yeah, and you don't get a whole lot of credit. I could probably use those, and if you've ever fallen on those, it's a trip to the hospital. They're like 60 grit or 30 grit sandpaper, so I would never use them. But they work beautifully. I've seen them work. You can pour a 5-gallon bucket of water and it just goes right through it. I think over time they would get clogged up, personally, because of any void, silt and sand gets in any void. But the reason why I was gonna do brick is this oceanfront home we demoed, we salvaged the driveway, and they're sitting on pallets across the street. I own the 2 lots across the street. And the homeowner decided they're not gonna use them. So now I either have to sell them, or use them, or keep them. And so I thought, well, perfect place, let's try them out here. And I want it to be known that the original request was not gonna be to apply for coverage. It was to be stone, but then when that came along, I'm like, that would make a really nice look. And I'm like, okay, some homeowner in the future is gonna do it anyway, and you might as well do it for them now. So.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, then you can be seated for now. I think there was one card.
We have one card, Scott Hardy.
Oh, and I guess we have a second card. Okay, you can be sworn in by the clerk.
Please raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Scott Hardy. I live at 1620 6th Street South, in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. I have 2 lots, so I have 100 feet by 150 feet directly behind Mr. Hanna and the other neighbor he was talking about. Actually, 50 by 150 is not that uncommon in our part of Jacksonville Beach. We were very fortunate to have some deeper lots. I attended the first variance in '05 for Mr. Hanna, and I spoke on Mr. Hanna's behalf. In fact, Mr. Hanna came to my home prior to him purchasing the lot, showed me the plans that he was going to build. He had this little son with a toddler's age. Explained what he was going to build, showed me the plans. Was not going to have a pool in the backyard. The pool was originally going to be between the garage and the main house. And so there'd be very little intrusion into my backyard. So I spoke on his behalf. When he was at my house, I'm not sure if Mr. Hanna remembers it or not from what he stated, but I did make him aware of the 12-foot alley that was between our houses. And I let him know that the city had informed me when I was doing my original plans and applying for my building permit, that we each had the opportunity to use 6 feet of that alley for our lot coverage. So whether, again, he didn't remember that or not, I'm not sure. But, so many years later, I believe 14, 13 years later is when the house started being built. And the house, the layout had changed quite a bit. And now there's a pool in the backyard, 5 feet from my fence, sticking up out of the ground, so that when you walk on his back pool patio, you're staring into my backyard. I bought a double lot, put up an 8-foot privacy fence for privacy. I really don't have a problem with what's happened because it's taken place. But I do believe that enough has been given to Mr. Hanna and his requests for this lot. There are other areas that were filled in that he might have could use for the driveway, the full driveway, but that's at a moot point. Right now, he's looking for more percentage. I feel like we've given enough, or excuse me, that the city's given enough to Mr. Hammond. He also noted that he has 2 lots on the same street, across the street. If you set a precedence for 45%, or are we going to continue to set a precedent for 45% every time one of these older homes or empty lots is built in? He does have an amazingly beautiful home behind us. It's definitely improved the neighborhood, not a shadow of a doubt. Did a beautiful job. He's obviously a very talented builder and used very good people. He's been building a home for several years, and I can tell you, everybody I've talked to compliments the house. But I think enough's enough on the land coverage. But to be honest with you, I will go with this. I don't understand why there's multiple applications for variances on the same house under construction. You know, he already did the variances. He knew what he was building with. He knew what he had. And now he wants to go on and add more to it. I say if you're going to give him the gravel, give him the gravel, but don't change the lot coverage. And if you have to change the lot coverage to give him gravel, then don't give him gravel.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy.
Thank you. One other thing. Everything does drain to the back, as he said, it powers off. There has been situations, and I've had a lot of water damage in my back of my house. But I'll stop now.
Thank you. And I think there's one more card.
Jason Fowle?
Yes, yeah, let's go see. Jason,
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Jason Cavalli, 1631 7th Street South. I live north of the house being.
Thank you. And as a reminder, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
I have no problem with the variance, like being the neighbor. He's done a great job on the house. My drainage is better now. He leveled out and helped me fix my side of the house and back of the house where I have no more standing water. So since he built the house, there hasn't been any problems with water. And you should give him the bricks and it look nice, and I'm all for it. That's all.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who has not filled out a speaker's card who wishes to speak at this time? All right, sir, you may come forward, and after you finish speaking, please make sure you fill out a speaker's card before you leave and give it to the clerk, but for now, you may be sworn in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address for the
My
record.
name is Tony Davenport, I live at 55 Tallwood, on several properties at Jack's Beach. I've been to several of these meetings, and I've seen over and over the density problem that's being created by this board. I've been in Jacksonville for almost 30 years now, and I've seen houses being built closer and closer together. My neighborhood backs up to a flood zone. This board, maybe not the individuals here now, granted variances for houses to be built in a flood zone. The last 3 years, I've been experiencing flooding. I talked with the Public Works. They said they don't have anyone on staff to do the calculations to make sure that flooding doesn't occur. That there's used to be a swell between the properties, carry the water out. It's no longer there. The city manager, the mayor, George Knight, David McDonald, Dennis Barron, they all say nothing because they cannot go on a person's property. You keep giving variances for lot coverage without the city. When I say the city, I'm referring to the building department and public works doing the proper due diligence to make sure you don't have flooding. That needs to be addressed. The presentation that was just given, you guys saw what he was talking about. No one else. He should provide slides. As far as adding gravel to each side of the driveway, I don't care. No one's going to care about that. If you look at Jack's Beach, you've got houses with gravel 10 feet in from the front. I just urge this board to look at the density that you're creating in Jack's Beach. It's not sustainable, and people are gonna start moving away. It's a beautiful city. I enjoy this place. I've got a business here for 30 years. I have several rental properties. It's getting too dense. So I urge you to give them the gravel, but control the lot coverage. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional audience members who have not filled out speaker's card but wish to speak at this time? Okay, Mr. Hannah, would you like to come and address any of those comments made?
I think this last gentleman was confused about density and lot coverage. He was thinking about density. There is no additional density. It's a single-family home. It will always be a single-family home. So the lot coverage issue, I completely get. I mean, nobody can say that I came in here asking for the moon, because I wasn't going to ask for anything. I'm asking for it because I can foresee a problem in the future with whoever buys the house. Now, I want to tell you, Scott, that Scott tried to take my 6 feet of the alleyway.
That's not true.
Sir, I'm sorry, but we can't entertain comments. from the
Attorneys got
audience.
involved. He refused to take his fence down, blah, blah, blah. I have at least a dozen, no, half a dozen FU emails, and Scott, I was prepared to play them
Mr. Hannah,
on
I'm sorry,
speaker.
you'll need to address
I
the
was
board only.
prepared to play them on speaker if he spoke negatively about me, and I chose, and he did speak negatively about me, so I'm not going to play them. I mean, FU laden, drunken tirades. Voicemail was calling me 47 times in one night for doing what's completely legal on my own property. Not a single drop of my water has ever made it onto his property, especially since I built this water management system. So if he thinks that there's water coming from my property onto his lot, that is a complete lie, and I don't know what else to say about it other than it's a complete lie. And there's no one here to prove that other than my hands raised to God, and I know for a fact that water does not leave my property. Jason can attest. I wish Lane was here. I fixed both people's properties on either side of me on my dime, and their properties work beautifully now. So again, there's no reason to deny the gravel. That's kind of what I want, but someday I would prefer the pavers, the additional percent for the pavers or the brick. But I completely get it if it's denied. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr.
You're
Hannah.
barking up the wrong tree, son.
I'll now close the public. Please make sure that we keep no discussion from the audience, please. I'll now close the public hearing and bring the item back before the board for discussion. Is there a motion to get it on the floor?
And just for my knowledge, for administration, I've never had a motion for gravel in my experience.
And that doesn't appear to be written into the actual motion.
So the request would be basically for no paved access. You typically see it, there's a requirement in code for paved access to a garage. And so that would be the request, yeah. To the chair's point, it wasn't the request that was advertised. I would defer to the attorney whether it's something you guys could consider or not. Because what we sent out as notice to the public was the lot coverage.
But
So-
I understand.
Hold on, is there a motion though, so that we can at least discuss?
I make a motion to approve DOA 22-100026 for lot coverage of 44.92%.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, so now it is on the floor for discussion.
Question, as I understand this, if we approve this motion and don't grant the additional lot coverage, it doesn't, we have no say over what he puts into the driveway area, as long as he doesn't exceed the lot coverage.
So the motion wouldn't affect what his obligations would be under the code. which he does have to provide paved access, and we don't consider gravel to be paved access. So, according to him, he has enough lot coverage to be able to provide the minimum, which are the ribbon strips for each parking space. So if you don't grant the variance, you would have to have paved parking, and the ribbon strips seem to be the only alternative at this point, unless he takes up some other lot coverage, because he would still be within that 42.7 that was originally granted. If you approve it, then he could put any approved paving material down to fill in the gaps.
But he can also put any approved paving material down into strips right now.
That's correct, yeah, it doesn't have to be
It could be pavers,
concrete.
it could be bricks, just as long as it's,
As long as he stays under that lot coverage that's in the previous variance.
and it's technically paved.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my biggest concern is that, the applicant himself said that he doesn't need the variance. I mean, I appreciate what he's saying, and I think we've all seen applicants get approved to put in ribbon strips and then come back and say they need to pave the whole thing. So that's not lost on me, but in his own words, he said that he doesn't need that excess coverage. So to me, it's pretty cut and dry that our obligation is not to approve it if it's beyond the minimum that he can develop the property currently.
I think what we're really saying is it a hardship if you have to live with a piece of property that is 98% attractive as opposed to 100% attractive? And that's not much of a hardship. It's not covered in our code.
His application actually said for grant of variance is a minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the parcel of land. And he says, no, I could use gravel instead. He actually has that written in the application, so that supports what you just stated.
I call a question on the motion.
Please discuss gravel,
Um,
gravel.
Okay,
4 houses down the street with gravel.
okay, so Mr. Moreland has called for a vote on the current motion to approve. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes, okay. So can we have a roll call vote?
There was no discussion on the gravel.
Sir, I'm sorry, we can't entertain comments from the audience at this time.
Owen Curley,
No.
Jeff Trular,
No.
John Moreland,
No. Excuse me, no.
Todd Smith,
No.
Alexi Gonzalez.
No. The request for lot coverage of 45% in lieu of 35% has been denied.
So I thought we were going to discuss approving gravel instead of that.
I'm going to ask you to direct your questions to city staff, but we can't discuss something that wasn't advertised to the neighbors. So
I got you.
in order to vote on something, it had to have been advertised
I got
ahead of time.
you. Okay.
Okay, can we please call the next case?
Board calls BOA 22-100028, applicant KEE Holdings, Inc., property address 121 10th Avenue North. Motion to consider section 34-340E1C1 for a front yard setback of 18 feet in lieu of 20 feet minimum, and 34-340E1C2 for an easterly side yard of 8 feet in lieu of 10 feet minimum to allow for the addition of an extended side and front deck and staircase at an existing two-family dwelling.
Thank you. As a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak when we open the public hearing. Does any board member have any ex parte communication to disclose on this agenda item?
I've had none.
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 And I've had none. Would the applicant please be sworn in to give your presentation?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Jim Pittman, 121 10th Ave North.
Thank you, and can you please tell us the nature of your hardship at this property?
Yes, the hardship is, it is a non-conforming lot. It's 50 foot wide, it's zoned for 60 foot wide area. The issue is that we're building a deck around that would wrap around the front of the home, from the east side of the home around to the front of the home. We originally provided plans to the city, and were the original set of plans, I don't know if you guys have those or not, actually brought the staircase around to the west elevation of the home. We knew that might be an issue. We thought it might be encroaching, but what we noticed is that the home to the west of us was already within 5 feet of the property line. So we thought maybe that, we'd be okay with that. After talking with Christian and going back and forth with the city, what we realized is that it would in fact encroach, and that we would need to bring, if we wanted to do it, bring the deck staircase back around to the east side of the home. We resubmitted our plans and also found out that we were over our lot coverage by doing so. And so we agreed to, in our plans, remove the driveway and put pervious pavers, which brought us back underneath the lot coverage. So we did everything we could to remain underneath lot coverage to satisfy the city. We even brought the structural components of the deck within the 10-foot property line, which they still are. The section in question is just a 2-foot overhang to allow for the staircase to be able to reach the 3rd-story deck, which was already there when we purchased the home. And the deck actually exceeded the space that we are now putting it back in its proposed state. So we're bringing it back in from where it originally was. The only section in question is the 2-foot overhang, but the structural components are all within the 10-foot setback. Also, the west elevation of the home, where the 2-foot overhang is we're 8 foot from the property line, and on the other side of that fence is the North Shore condominium parking lot. So we're not really encroaching on any other residences. It is truly just a parking lot, and that's it.
Thank you. Do any board members have questions for the applicant? Okay. Hearing none, you can take a seat for now. And do we have any speaker cards for this?
We have the speaker cards, and we don't have any letters.
Okay. Is there any member of the audience who wishes to speak but has not filled out a speaker card for this item? Okay. Hearing none, I will now close the public hearing and bring the item back before the board for discussion. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve BOA 22-100028. Based on the testimony and evidence provided, the request has met the standards for variances outlined in section 34-286 of the Land Development Code.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Come in.
Okay. Hearing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Jeff Trular,
Yes.
John Moreland,
Yes.
Owen Curley,
Yes.
Todd Smith,
Yeah.
Alexi Gonzalez.
Yes. Your application has been approved. Thank you. Can we call the next case, please?
Board calls BOA 22-100029, applicant Holly and Robert Robertson. Property address 1101 13th Street North. Motion to consider sections 34-337E1C2 for a northern side yard setback of 1 foot in lieu of 5 foot minimum, and a combined side yard setback of 8 feet in lieu of 15 foot minimum. 37-337E1C3 for a rear yard setback of 25 feet in lieu of 30 feet minimum. 34-337E1E for a lot coverage of 52% in lieu of 35% maximum. And 34-337E1G for an accessory structure setback of 1 foot in lieu of 5 foot minimum to rectify existing nonconformities and to allow for the enclosure of an existing screened room at an existing single-family dwelling.
Thank you. As a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak once we open the public hearing. Does any board member have any ex parte communication to disclose?
I've had none.
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 And I've had none. So the applicant, please be sworn in to give your presentation.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Holly Robertson, 1101 13th Street North, Pax Beach.
Thank you. And can you please tell us the nature of your hardship at this property?
Yes, the hardship is that we are currently in a substandard lot. The original, when the house was built in like 1985, it has a lot coverage of about 5,100. So as currently under the residential zoning as of 2020, it says a single family dwelling can have the minimum coverage of 7,500. So we're already just short naturally about 2,400 square feet. That's part of it. So we have an existing glassed-in screened enclosure that came when we purchased the house in 2003. So that's almost 20 years. So it's in disrepair with leaking, and screens are torn and not very stable. So we're asking that we just want to get rid of the existing one and just rebuild another one. We're not asking for anything bigger. It's a 10 by 16. So that's what we're hoping to do, is to give it a facelift and make it a little bit safer and not ask for anything other than what was already there when we purchased it.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
Just for clarity, you're saying taking a screen and putting back, or a sunroom and putting back a sunroom, not adding this as additional space condition?
Right. Originally, when, over the last few years, that has been part of a conversation, but we have enjoyed the sunroom. But when it was built, I don't know, the house was built in 1985. We've had people come out and look at it. There's no insulation, so it's very hot and kind of thrown together. And so we do want to just put the same thing. This is currently a glass screened enclosure. It's just old. It's just in disrepair, so it's been hard to use.
Just when I said put walls up, the walls were existing, so just take a screen, put them, when I read through it, it said put walls up. I assume the walls are there, that you'll put the walls back up.
Yes, it's all screened in, yes, with glass.
Any additional questions? Okay, you can be seated for now. Do we have any speaker cards for this item?
No cards and no letters.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who's not filled out a speaker's card who wishes to speak on this item? Okay, hearing no one, I will now close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve BOA 22-100029 based on the testimony and evidence provided. The request has met the standards for variance is outlined in section 34-286 of the Land Development Code.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Through the chair, just explanation, I think, for Mr. Trular. I think I read the application wrong. I didn't realize it was previously glassed in.
Okay.
Yeah, my fault.
Any further discussion? Okay, can we have a roll call vote, please?
John Moreland,
Yes.
Owen Curley,
Yes.
Jeff Trular,
Yes.
Todd Smith,
Yeah.
Alexi Gonzalez.
Yes. Your application has been approved.
Thank you.
Can we call the next case, please?
Board calls BOA 22-100030, applicant Michael and Lauren Garcia. Property address 527 15th Avenue South. Motion to consider sections 34-337 E1E for lot coverage of 60% in lieu of 35% maximum, and 34-337 E1G for a walkway setback of 0 feet in lieu of 2 feet minimum to allow for the addition of a paver walkway to the west side yard and a swimming pool deck to an existing single-family dwelling.
Thank you, and please remember each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak once we open the public hearing. Do any board members have ex parte communication on this item?
I've had none.
I've had none.
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 And I've had none. So will the applicant please be sworn in and give your presentation?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Michael Garcia, 527 15th Avenue South, Jacks Beach, Florida, 32250.
Thank you, and can you please tell us the nature of your hardship at this property?
Sure. First of all, good evening, and thank you to the board for your time and consideration. Our story real quick. We bought the house recently. We bought the house and it was at 65% impervious surface. To be sure, the existing pavers, when we considered buying the house, were very appealing and played a critical role in our decision to buy the house. And when we bought the house, it was we were not given any indication that this was out of regulation for the property. On the first section of our request, well, first let me go on and explain our story a little bit more. So our property is at 60, when we purchased it, at 65% impervious surface. We chose to request a permit to install a pool. We did that, and to facilitate the installation of the pool, we had several pavers removed for plumbing and whatnot for the pool installation. Upon completion of the installation of the pool, we intended to put the pavers back down, kind of in their same place, of course, with the exception of the pool. And that's when we found out that to reinstall the pavers would require a permit. This was news to us. And the reason was it was at 65%, but once we removed the pavers, we were now actively putting pavers down in obstruction of the 35% impervious surface rule. And so that's our story. That's where I'm at, and that's where I'm requesting a variance to facilitate putting these pavers back in. On the first section of the request for the pavers, I just want to say I appreciate the staff's recommendation to approve that variance. And on the second section of the request, on the first, I also wanted to add, I think it's reasonable, and that's why I'm grateful for your reasonable response. The pool is not impervious, and so what we've actually done is reduce the impervious surface on our property. So I appreciate your recommendation for approval on that. On the second section of our request, certainly a hardship of ours is the lot size, and as the analysis reads, based on lot width, there may be a case for the setback encroachment. But regarding the side yard setback on the west side of the property, I just want to clarify a point that may be confused in the staff report. The walkway setback that we're referring to is not to facilitate a new paver walkway. The setback on the west fence, as is 0 feet. It was like that when we purchased the property. There's nothing we've ever manipulated. We never raised those pavers. And so the request we're making, I believe, is reasonable and is to maintain the setback as it was when we purchased it. And so for what it's worth, also I'd like to point out that our neighbors to the west, Joey, he's lived there for several years, made it good. He's never observed any problems with our pavers going all the way to the fence. So just wanted to point out this, want to make sure this was clear for the second part of the request. And then just add that note. That's all I've got. Thank you again for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Does anyone have questions for the applicant at this time? Anybody? Okay. All right, you can be seated. Do we have any speaker cards on this item?
No speaker cards, one email. We have one email from Jeff Sandals at 501 15th Avenue South, Jacksonville Beach, Florida, 32250. sent Friday, April 8th, 2022 at 1:22 PM to the Planning Commission. Subject BOA 22-100030. Good afternoon. I am supportive of the application for 527 15th Avenue South to have lot coverage of 60%. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this item but has not filled out a speaker's card? Okay, in that case, I will now close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Is there a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion to approve BOA 22-100030. Based on the testimony and evidence provided, the request has met the standards for variance as outlined in section 34-286 of the Land Development Code.
I'll second for discussion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this item?
Yes. I understand that it's an undersized lot in terms of percent of lot coverage. The 60% is a heck of a lot, and if we take a look at what that translates to, if it was a full-size RS2 lot, it comes out to 50%. Seems to me that's still an exorbitant amount of lot coverage for a lot that is requesting more than what I think ought to be allowed, even in recognition of the fact that it is an undersized lot. It's not that undersized.
My concern is I don't see the necessity to have the 2 foot on the west side if we don't have it on the east side. There's more books than that, running all the way to a 0 lot line.
It just seems to perpetuate this non-conforming issue on the west side.
This is an undersized lot, I see that, but there's an awful lot built on this lot.
There's a lot of
Through the chair, if I can just address the setback issue. Sometime after the construction of the house prior to the current owner's purchase, these are the improvements that were made, all these noted pavers here. That included this walkway here, and then the walkway all the way to the backyard. What the applicant's proposing is to basically reinstall the pavers in this area and also keep this portion here. So this and this would be the 2 encroachments. But both of these were added as part of that improvement that was never permitted. So you can go back and look at the original approval for the house, and this walkway here wasn't included, none of this was included. So I think those are the 2 portions he was referring to. It's not just this, it's also including that
And
there.
that's the front door, I assume, with it?
No, actually, the front door's over here.
Okay. The door
Just goes from the driveway to the backyard, I think.
goes to grass.
Yeah, I assume based on the original, what was built, it was a walkway to the pool.
So, question, was that actually permitted?
No, that improvement happened sometime between 2017 and 2019, we can't tell for sure.
And the existing wood structures are staying, is that correct?
Yeah, they proposed to keep the shed and the cabana. The pavers that were there were taken up during construction, so the existing lot coverage minus the pavers that were removed would be 50%. Putting the pavers back is what gets them to that 60% point.
So all the pavers that we're seeing highlighted in yellow is a 10% equation.
Right.
I'm sorry, say that again. The yellow is the extra 10% that brings us to 60.
Correct, yeah.
Without the yellow, we're at 50.
Yes. But that would be including the shed and the cabana.
That's right, yeah.
I assume the small sidewalk that goes to the side yard.
Yes.
Do you have any idea what the square footage is just for that portion?
The walkway?
The portion that's related to the side yard setback request.
It's not called out specifically. It was just listed as part of the pavers.
Okay.
I don't want to take a stab at calculating it without, with actual measurements provided. I don't think it would be a significant percentage.
Well, the yellow would equal 620 square feet.
still, that would translate to 41.8% if it was a standard size lot.
Yeah, I think while, you know, I appreciate that the applicant has reduced the lot coverage that, and the nonconformity that was created by the previous owner, I feel as though it would confer special privileges upon them were we to approve the amount of lot coverage that they're requesting, because if they were just putting this into a totally, you know, open grass backyard, I don't know that we would be able to consider it, because it is so far beyond the maximum or the minimum necessary use. We're only considering this amount because of what was done previously, which, yes, was not done by the applicant, but at the same time, it raises concerns about special privileges being conferred just because this is the situation they inherited from the previous owner. Any further discussion? So the motion was to approve the entire request, correct? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, can we have a roll call vote, please?
John Moreland,
No.
Owen Curley,
No.
Jeff Truelar,
No?
Todd Smith,
No.
Alexi Gonzalez.
No. Your request has been denied. Can we please call the final case?
Board calls BOA 22-100031, applicant Sarah Rocco. Property address 1415 3rd Street North. Motion to consider sections 34-373 for 12 parking spaces in lieu of 30, required to allow for the conversion of an existing commercial retail space to a salon.
Thank you. As a reminder, each member of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak once we open the public hearing. Does any board member have any ex parte communication on this agenda item?
I've had none. Had none?
None.
None.
None. And I've had none. Will the applicant please be sworn in to give your presentation?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Michael Bird, 3855 Arrow Point Trail West, Jacksonville, Florida.
Thank you. And can you please describe the nature of your hardship at this property?
The history on the property is it was a commercial built back in 1984, plus or minus. It was built as is now. It was a single owner property, retail. I'm assuming it stayed that way for the entire time it was owned. It was purchased by Sarah Rocco recently, and she would like to convert the use from retail to a salon, which is slightly different occupancy classification. And also in discussions with staff, the parking lot was didn't have a dumpster location and also didn't have handicap accessibility. It had one parking spot, but it didn't have accessibility to the main road, which is required by code. So she request, and the variation in retail compared to a salon is it increases one parking spot. So the parking the lot is covered fully. There's very little space on either side. At the existing, there's a pylon sign, and so what we're requesting is to keep the remaining parking spots and providing a dumpster location, dumpster enclosure for this lot, and not changing anything else.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
Yes, and understanding the purpose, parking is different because of the usage of salon. When we say salon, so is each chair rented, so there's or is it one salon with multiple chairs and one
Yeah, it's gonna be a boutique, circumstance. If you don't know exactly what that is, they're gonna have individual, pods.
Chairs, possibly,
Chairs.
proprietary, yeah.
But they're not, they'll have,
Kind of like cubicles, right?
Cubicles. And, it won't be one owner, it'll be a number of different,
So-
individuals.
On a Saturday, when I think salons are busy, kind of close to one, wouldn't you have an operator and a customer in each station, in essence?
Yeah, that's one of the requirement for two.
And I understand why
Two
drives
parking,
that
right,
requirement.
two parking spaces per chair.
Right.
And there's a possibility of 10 to 12 chairs.
Yeah.
Possibility of 10 to 12 chairs, which is 22 spots and, or 24 spots, and there's not.
How do you overcome that problem that's being created? That's what I'm trying to understand. I mean, but if you're a proprietor of a chair, I'm not going to say.
Right.
The challenge I'm trying to get past is, how do you, if it would be one owner and you had multiple people and chairs, working multiple chairs, it doesn't work like that in the salons.
Well, Christian, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think even a retail, requirement for parking in that space, it doesn't need it.
I will see that we need with the new.
So that's why,
idea.
and it's landlocked, there's no
Yeah,
way
I
to
see the challenge with that.
And, we're providing a handicap stall, which is 12 by 20, with a 5-foot space, and then the rest of the spaces are what's left over. If we didn't have to put the dumpster in, we'd have one more space, but that's where we stand.
Have you discussed, I mean, you said sequencing, but has the business owner discussed some sort of scheduling system where not every stylist and customer would be booked at the same time in that many chairs?
Yeah, I really can't answer that, I'll let you, Sarah. I'm not sure she's that far along in the process.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, you can be seated for now.
Thank you.
Do we have any speaker cards?
We have one card. We have a card, Tony Davenport.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
20 Davenport, with a 55 Tallwood, property at 336 14th Avenue, which is a business, property at 324 14th Avenue, and 329 14th Avenue, within 300 feet of this property. From the letter submitted to the board, the intent to put 15 individual salons in place and have 13 parking spaces. They're asking to eliminate part of the greenway to allow for a sidewalk. And to put a fence up on the south side of the property next to the kangaroo store. For the last several years, I've experienced extreme problems with over parking because of Metro Diner, Milano's, and a gym. If this is approved, the parking situation is going to get worse. If there's 2 parking spaces per salon, we're going to have 50 salons, 30 parking spaces. So I don't understand why it would even be considered. There's several salons around this concept, around Jack's Beach. The one I go to, there's a gym there. They seldom have any parking spaces dedicated for the salon. It's at a shopping center. There's another one down Beach Boulevard, experiencing the same thing. I'm bitterly opposed to this because I'm tired of not having parking spaces for my employees, having residents complaining to me about not having parking spaces. If this is approved, it's just gonna create more problems for me, and I don't need more problems. I don't want more problems. I want the board to look at the density that you're creating here by approving all these variance requests. The agenda item only lists that they want to reduce it to 12 parking spaces. Does not say anything else about the letter reducing the green space, which is less than 20 feet between a multifamily apartment building and that building. Doesn't say anything about the signs they want to put up at between Kangaroo Station. So I'm urging the board to deny this request and ask them to meet the parking standards that will accommodate 15 salons, individual booths.
Thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this item who has not filled out a speaker's card? Okay, would you like to come back?
We don't have
Letters? Okay. Would you like to address the comments that were made?
Can I speak?
You sworn in, is that okay?
Yeah.
Yes, you'll need to fill out a speaker's card and, be sworn in, but yes, you can speak.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
Scott Simmons, 711 15th Avenue South, Jacksonville Beach.
Could you speak in the microphone so it's on record?
And keep in mind, you'll have 3 minutes.
Sure. I just wanted to get up and speak as a friend and colleague of the owner of the property. It's the old Amy's Turn, and I'm familiar with it and familiar with what they're kind of up against. I'm also a contractor, do a lot of work in Jacks Beach, and I've been in the property and looked at it. In its original design, it's 4 units. There was only one business operating out of this, but there's 4 electric meters, there's 4 storefronts, and I really don't know how you make that work with the amount of parking spots that's there in any form or fashion without some sort of variance for parking. I also know, and I don't know what the exact number is, but within 1 block of that building, there's like 30 or 40 public parking spaces on the street, on the back side of the block, front side, and the side. So I'm just in support of what she's trying to do, improve the community, my community, and that's it.
Thank you. No, you're good.
Okay. And I just want to reiterate that this facility was set up for retail spaces. And the only reason that we're involved with the board is the fact that there's new ownership. It was grandfathered in before. Nothing has changed as far as lot size, lot layout, parking. The signage is already there. The pylon sign is grandfathered in. You can't make it any bigger, but the signage will be there. The only improvement we would be doing would be the dumpster locations and possibly the front of the building. So, and I don't think with the layout we can get 15 in there. We'd be lucky to get 12. If we go to retail, we could split up into 3 units, 3 different bathrooms, 3 units in there, and I don't think it's not big enough to have the parking requirements for 4 separate entities.
When was the property bought?
A year ago?
It says December 24.
Oh, so it's recently, December 2020.
Any additional questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now close the public hearing and bring the item back to the board for discussion. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to approve BOA 22-100031 based on testimony and evidence provided. The request has met the standards for variance as outlined in section 34-286 of the Land Development Code.
Second. Discussion.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this item?
I struggle supporting that much parking shortage.
I agree. I mean, we've had issues come before us where, you know, I think we've been able to evaluate sort of more modern business models that don't necessarily fit with the parking code. Where there might be a situation that, you know, we're a by appointment only business, so we'll never have more than 4 cars in the parking lot, but this doesn't seem to be able to
Control
make that right.
Sounds like they're just trying to get the maximum number of chairs in without having the supporting parking spaces. And so, to my mind, they just have to reduce the number of chairs that they have. That's the only solution that they have.
I think it's a self-imposed, self-created hardship.
Based on the type of business that they're trying to operate.
Trying to
Well, no,
maximize.
it's the size of the business.
Well, both,
The
yeah.
model, they work, if you don't put some of the chairs in.
Mhm.
I think it's self-imposed hardship.
Christian, the criteria number 4, literal interpretation of the code may deprive the applicant. That's based on the fact that they're applying for a use, for this specific use, correct? I mean, there are other uses that might require fewer parking spots that would be zoned.
Yeah, so probably the lightest parking standard that we have would be for something like professional office, which would be 1 space per 300 square feet, which this parking lot would accommodate. The commercial use that was previously there is under a standard of 1 to 200, which would require 15 striped spaces because it's roughly 3,000 square feet. So in this case, criteria 4 would be that they would not be able to do the exact use, but there would be potentially other uses for the property. If I can clarify one thing, there is no external landscape buffer requirement between 2 commercial uses on a parking area. The only requirement is between residential or on the street. And the street is a pre-existing condition where they want to put the sidewalk isn't a required green space, so they can improve that without any variances. Same for the fence. So that's why they're not part of the request.
Any further discussion? Okay, the motion on the floor is to approve the request, I believe. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Owen Carlin,
No.
Jeff Trular,
No.
John Moreland,
No.
Todd Smith,
No.
Alexi Gonzalez.
No. The request has been denied. Moving on to the planning department report.
Just that we went before City Council last night and got approval to begin negotiations with our consultant for the comp plan and land development code update. So hopefully we're meeting with them tomorrow. We'll be bringing it back to council, I believe, in May, if everything goes well. So we should begin to see that process probably in June. We'll start to see public hearings popping up. So be prepared for a lot of questions.
I have a quick question. I know that there had been some discussion about possibly having on a future agenda, changing the time of our meetings.
Yes.
Appropriate to ask on the night that the meeting went to 9 p.m. Is that something that might end up on agenda in the future to discuss?
Sandy and I have been discussing that. I mean, it's something that we definitely wanted to bring forward to you guys. We just weren't quite sure how we were going to do it. I think it's something that the board can decide. I don't really know what the procedure would be other than, because we don't have bylaws to amend or anything like that. I don't know if Sandy wants to take a stab at what the process would be.
I won't take a stab at it, but I will research to see what is in your power to do without having to.
Okay. And I know there had been discussion about it in the past, and we kind of decided not to, but I think it's come up again because City Council has moved their meeting time. to meet at 7 and now they're meeting at 6.
Correct, yeah, they meet at 6 o'clock, and
Just
just hold their
something
briefings
to
at
keep in
5:30.
mind. Okay, anything else? Courtesy of the floor to visitors. So if we've got any visitors, you're welcome to, yeah. Do they need to be, well, he's already been sworn in.
Probably considered a familiar visitor. You've seen my face again, but I was wondering if there's any chance, and I don't know how goes procedurally, but to have some guidance on how to move forward in my case. I'm happy to make concessions, but right now I'm not really sure how to move forward. And I'm trying to do a good thing. My property had this percentage, and I think probably removing all of them would be a step too far. I'd like to get to a happy place. I don't know where to go.
I would suggest you can talk to us off the record. We'll work to figure out what the process will be for that.
Good, just give it going while you're off, okay?
Yes.
Wednesdays?
Typically, yeah.
Alright, thanks, Christian.
Thank you. Seeing no other visitors, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor? Aye.